Hello, we're Jim and Rene from Tripawds.com, and we want to thank you for tuning in to this keynote talk we gave at the Greyhounds Rock Fredericksburg 2012 Take a Bite Out of Canine Cancer Conference. We hope you enjoy these tips we have to share about canine cancer and amputation, and we ask that you please stick around because we're going to have a special gift just for watching the whole thing.
I just want to take a second to thank our sponsors for helping us get to this conference. The first sponsor is Canine Medicinals. They're the distributors for Canine Immunity. It's a cancer-fighting supplement that we had great success with when we tried it with our dog Jerry. And if you'd like to learn more, please go to caninemedicinals.com.
We were also honored to be sponsored by the Morris Animal Foundation, who helped us get to the conference. And the Morris Animal Foundation is one of the oldest animal health and wellness organizations on the planet, and we've been big supporters of theirs during their Cure Canine Cancer campaign over the years. You can find out more at morrisanimalfoundation.org. We are going to show a few videos we think you're going to enjoy, along with a couple comic strips, and we're going to share a lot of information from these two resources here. 3 Legs and a Spare is our own canine amputation handbook with some of the best information from Tripawds, available at downloads.tripawds.com. The Dog Cancer Survival Guide addresses a full spectrum care approach, which we will about treating cancer, and we'll just get into that in a bit later. You can find out more about Dr. Dressler's book at dogcancerguidebook.com. So who are we and what brings us here and what is our story? Well, how about we start at the beginning?
This is Jerry. We adopted him in 1998 from the Humane Society where we used to live in Northern California. Jerry was our first dog, and like a lot of people, we were pretty clueless about things like canine health back then. You know, we took him to the grocery store, bought him food off the shelf, never really thought twice about what he ate. And we took him to a guy who we thought was the best vet in town because he had all the bells and whistles in his office. He also liked to throw a lot of big words at us. And when he did that, it never occurred to Jim or I to question anything that he had to say.
Our life with Jerry was just great, though. We were a very active pack. We'd often run on the beach and take frequent road trips, which Jerry just loved. After one of those trips, he came up limping out of the blue, and we really didn't know what to do. Actually, a couple months went by before we got any solid answers. It was actually his vet tech who took us aside one day and confidentially suggested we get a second opinion. And if it wasn't for that vet tech, we probably wouldn't have enjoyed another 2 years with Jerry, because that second vet we talked to admitted she didn't know. And we ended up going to UC Davis, where we discovered osteosarcoma and things like amputation and chemotherapy, probably a couple months after Jerry's symptoms first appeared.
When we found out Jerry had cancer, we felt terrible. We didn't even know dogs got cancer. And we thought, why didn't we see it sooner? He was showing symptoms, like in this picture, he's holding up his front left leg. When the doctors recommended amputation to remove the bad leg, the thought of that was just horrifying. We had never even seen a 3-legged dog before.
For the staff at UC Davis, this was perfectly normal. They saw it all the time. For us, it was a huge shock. They were even referring to amputee dogs as tripod dogs. They informed us that the cancer would return, but amputation could get rid of the pain and give Jerry a better quality of life. But they didn't give him a very great prognosis. They suggested he might live a year if we decided to do chemotherapy.
And we kept thinking, Jerry, a tripod? No way. He was active and loved to do things. So we went to the web looking for some kind of hope that he could be happy as a tripod. But instead, all we found were nothing but depressing statistics and no real good examples of 3-legged dogs. Then we went to YouTube and we found this.
We wanted to share this clip with you.
Oh, what a good boy. Oh, get that goat.
It really changed our lives. Here was Moose, a giant Great Dane, running around chasing balls and digging up gophers with that one front leg. So we contacted Moose's people, and they were kind enough to share with us that he too had osteosarcoma, his recovery went well, and they weren't questioning their decisions. They weren't focusing on the end. They were really just happy to have their dog around, enjoying life every day. We figured, if Moose could do this, Jerry was only 75 pounds. He certainly could too.
And this video really shows you the power of the internet. To be able to reach out and talk to Moose's people, it really helped us so much. And we realized that amputation would be worth it for more quality time together.
It certainly was. We had much to be thankful for on Thanksgiving Day 2006 when the doctor came into the hospital and discharged Jerry. He came hopping down the hallway. We looked at his scar and wondered, oh my dog, what have we done? We didn't know if he'd be able to pee or get up the stairs at home. And after we got home, we started a little blog to share his progress with friends and family. Well, Tripawds was born, and our cancer journey began.
And when that journey began, we never would have believed that cancer could have a silver lining. But it really turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Because back then, when Jerry was diagnosed, Jim and I were really burnt out on what we did for a living and where we lived, and we just needed a change in our lives. So we figured if Jerry only had 6 months, let's spend that time together. We thought, what could we do? Well, let's do what Jerry loves to do best. He loved to go on road trips, see new places, and meet new people. So we sold everything we owned to pay for a year off of quality time together.
These things don't happen overnight, though, so while we were researching RVs and selling our business, Jerry just continued to defy the odds, especially considering we opted out of chemotherapy. I remember telling him often every night, Jerry, just hang in there. We're going to go on a great adventure. Just hang in there. But he did more than hang in there. He continued to amaze us every day.
Doesn't he look like a happy dog? That's over on the right. That picture was taken just a month or so after his surgery. You can really see the difference, can't you? So several months had passed from the time he was diagnosed until we actually hit the road. And when we finally hit the road, we promised Jerry that we weren't going to let cancer rule every minute of our lives together.
And we didn't, not at all. We actually followed Jerry's lead all around the country, enjoying life every day. We played the tourist and took him some places that dogs aren't usually allowed. We saw the sights. We waded across the headwaters of the Mississippi and crossed the river a number of times in our travels together. We made it up to Canada with Jerry and saw Niagara Falls from both sides. And we got to see Jerry play in the Atlantic Ocean. This was a huge milestone for us, considering he loved the beach and he was playing in the Pacific just a few months prior. We made it back to the desert with him and enjoyed time there. And during Jerry's final days, we made it back to the top of the world in Colorado.
Meanwhile, as we were traveling around the country, our Tripawds community was growing. We were getting emails from people all over the world asking us questions about Jerry's amputation and his cancer and what we were doing about it. And, well, that was just surprising to us because we're not vets.
No, we're not vets. But we did have what we thought was an amazing story to share, and we wanted anyone to see it who might be facing the same difficult decisions we did. So we posted lots of inspirational photos of him running and playing. And we took lots of video, especially of him swimming, just to show other people how well dogs can do on 3 legs. But we weren't just getting lots of YouTube hits and attracting fans. We were actually building a community of like-minded folks who were sharing their own stories too.
Some of the things we shared about Jerry's cancer was we talked about his diet, his doctor visits, and his prognosis. And we found a lot of comfort by talking with other people through email. And we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could all talk to each other and share each other's stories right there on the web? So that's when Jim installed discussion forums on Tripawds, and our little community grew from a couple dozen people to over 4,500 today.
In the meantime, it was about 15 months into our journey with Jerry when we were at a checkup with him in Los Angeles, California. A vet convinced us we should get some x-rays, and we discovered lung metastasis. His cancer had returned. He clearly wasn't showing any signs yet, but we were thrown back to square one and started questioning our own decisions. We had to decide, do we keep going and enjoying life with Jerry, or do we stop everything and try to attack this cancer more aggressively? It was at that time when we were researching oncologists and where we would go next that PBS contacted us. A producer was developing a show called Why We Love Cats and Dogs. If you've never seen it, we highly recommend you watch it. It's about an hour long and it addresses the bond we have with our animals. We're just the crazy dog people. And we'd like to share a couple minutes of it just to summarize our story.
Jerry's been with us through the most important part of our lives. We got him soon after we got married, bought our first house, started a business. God, we went whole hog and we were working every day for 12 hours a day, and Jerry was always with us because we always worked out of our home office. We used to call him the CFO, the chief fun officer.
Or the canine fun officer.
Canine fun officer, yeah.
He would come at 4:30, 5 o'clock. He'd know what time it was. He would nudge the keyboard. We would go on hikes, and he would, run and play and swim way out in the backcountry. 5, 6 years went by where he was just the most playful, friendly part of the family. Our last hike, just a couple weeks after that, he started limping. And they said it was arthritis, so we put him on a drug. A couple weeks went by, took him off the drug, and he was limping worse. I pressed on his shoulder one night, I'll never forget it, and he just let out a yelp like it was bloody murder.
Awful.
There was a tumor about the size of a mango growing inward, so we didn't see it through his fur.
Yeah, you couldn't feel it.
And the doctor said, sorry to say it, but it's cancer, and we were put on the spot. Amputate, and he'll have a bit longer to live, or medicate him.
If he could have a good quality of life on 3 legs, even if it was just a few months, that's all that mattered. A lot of people look at a dog with 3 legs and just think, it's terrible, why would you do that? Dogs are meant to have 4 legs.
Going to the hospital.
The doctor told us he's already on 3 legs. Doing this will get rid of his pain. At that point, it was just, no brainer. Because, I want more time with Jerry. The doctor told us he had 3 to 4 months to live. The routine that Jerry didn't like was waiting all day for us to play with him. So we decided to take this road trip, see new places with him, take him out into the wilderness where he loves to be. And our life just took this 180, and it was all about Jerry. And here we are 14 months later. He just wants to play, play, play. He says, let's go.
Oh, snow, look! He got snow! Oh my God.
We decided we're not going to put him through any chemotherapy treatments. And not to do x-rays every few weeks like they said we could do to see if something's coming back. We decided it was better not to know. I figured he would let us know when he was sick. We knew the signs. He would stop eating, he would get lethargic. I want to see Jerry playing and enjoying life until that happens. And when that time comes, by all means, man.
A lot of people thought we were nuts when we sold our business and our house and said we were going to travel for a while. How far do you go for a dog?
Time's up, Jerry.
I mean, he's not a kid, he's not a human, but he means so much to us. I can't picture our lives without him.
The original air date of that nature episode was February 2009. And on the night that it broadcast, there were so many people that were moved by Jerry's story that they all rushed to the PBS website at the same time to leave him messages and talk about their own pets. Well, so many people did that all at once that they crashed the PBS servers. We couldn't believe it. Jerry brought down the PBS website. It was crazy. Well, if you're familiar at all with osteosarcoma, you know how Jerry's story ends. We had 2 wonderful years together, far longer than anybody ever thought we would. It's really hard to believe that we set him free here in Montana where this picture was taken just about 4 years ago.
But Jerry's story lives on, and it's joined every day by hundreds of other members who are sharing their own stories from around the world. Today it's become our labor of love to help others. And, well, enough about us. Let's talk about coping and care and what we do when we hear a diagnosis, and then some amazing stories about some dogs that we've met.
You might be familiar with this statistic. Over half of all dogs are going to be diagnosed with some form of canine cancer. Now what that means is that if we have animals in our lives, at some point every one of us is going to deal with cancer. So when that happens, we have to remember, our animals are living with the cancer. They're not automatically dying from it.
Not at all, but we're not vets, so our mission is really just to provide a platform of discussion so others can share their own stories. And there's a lot of information to share, but we never judge people for their decisions, because there's really no right or wrong decisions when it comes to coping with a cancer diagnosis or amputation in dogs. But we have discovered one best way to cope with it, and that is to be more dog.
So what does it mean to be more dog? Well, it means living life in the now, like our dogs do. Because following their lead can improve our life in so many different ways, especially if we happen to be dealing with cancer in our pets.
So let's talk about coping with the diagnosis for a minute, and what we do when we hear the dreaded C word. Like we said, we suggest being more dog. And here's 3 simple ways that we've discovered about how to do that. 1 is to focus on the now, not the end, and understand that a prognosis is not an expiration date by any means. 2, you've got to learn that every day is a great day, and you have to accept what you can and can't change, and just make the most out of life. Finally, we need to be present, like dogs. It's been said before, but they understand that the past is history, tomorrow may never come, and today is a gift. That's why they call it the present.
You know, we can't cure cancer yet, but there's lots of great research going on, and in the meantime, we need to make the most out of life when this disease happens to us. So Jim and I are going to show you how with some great examples from Tripawds.
Let's start with Trouble. She was a pit bull out of East Texas, and it was her mom who first came to the Tripawds forums and said, "A diagnosis does not come with an expiration date stamped on your dog's butt." We think that's just great, and it's so true, because no prognosis is set in stone, and that's because every dog is different. Cancer often behaves differently than researchers predict, too. So take the information you find seriously, but keep in mind that statistics don't account for your dog in your particular situation.
Because you just don't know who's going to beat the odds. You know, Trouble wasn't a good candidate for amputation surgery, according to her first vet. All this vet could see was that she was a little bit overweight, she was a little arthritic, and she was older. Definitely not the first choice for living life on 3 legs. But what the vet couldn't see was that Trouble was tough, and she was persistent, like her people, who went out and got a second opinion from another vet, which made all the difference in the world for this dog.
It's a good thing they got that second opinion, too, because Trouble ended up surviving more than 2 years. Vets tend to provide the worst possible prognosis when informing clients about their pets. And that's because they do want to prepare them for the worst possible thing that might occur. But I believe some vets also tend to cover their own butts, just in case the chosen treatment plan doesn't work out as well as was expected. But like Troubles, many vets discourage amputation altogether, or major surgery in the case of other cancers. Well, these vets don't understand the power of dog, and they always underestimate the power of 3 when it comes to amputation.
We know a lot of dogs like Trouble who've beaten the odds. So if your dog has cancer, remember, your dog might too. Be realistic, but be open to the possibilities.
Because the possibilities are really limitless. We like to tell people to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Take Eisen here, for instance. He proved that 9 out of 10 statistics are wrong. He actually survived osteosarcoma for 4 years on 3 legs, and that was without chemotherapy. His mom chose to go the holistic route with the guidance of a Dr. Charles Loops in South Carolina, and you can find out about Dr. Loops and his plans in the Tripawds Nutrition blog.
We've learned a lot from some great vets along the way, including Dr. Mullins here, Jerry's oncologist. Now, one thing that we learned is that it's all about quality of life, not quantity, when it comes to treating cancer. We learned that when it comes to treating the cancer itself, the goal is to reach a point called stable disease. What that means is that the animal is getting just enough chemotherapy or radiation to keep the disease from growing and hopefully shrinking. And also to ensure that they're still having a good quality of life. Because in the end, it's really not about how much time you have left with your dog, but about making the most out of the time that you do have together.
It really is about quality of life, not quantity, and dogs know that. But they don't know they have cancer. They really only look to us to help them feel better. And our reaction when we hear cancer is usually to stomp our feet and throw our fists and wonder, why my dog? Well, that's okay. You gotta vent, you gotta let it out, but just don't do it in front of your dog, because they turn to us as strong, balanced pack leaders to help prove to them that life is going to be okay.
And one way you can prove to your dog that things are going to be okay is to not see your dog as being sick. Remember, your dog is living with the cancer, not dying from it. The famous self-help guru, Dr. Wayne Dyer, told Oprah Winfrey that sickness is a state of mind. He told this to her because he was discussing his own leukemia diagnosis, which he says that he cured by telling doctors, "I'm not sick." Well, that was 7 years ago, and his cancer never came back, so it must have worked.
If you look at any dog who's been newly diagnosed with cancer or after an amputation, you're going to see a dog who thinks a lot like Dr. Dyer. He's not upset, not counting the days. He's just focused on the now, like Dexter here. Dogs are incredibly resilient creatures, and they will adapt. In the case of amputation, they will bounce back, often quite literally. They really only want to know why we are so upset. And it was a certified rehab vet in California, Dr. Kramer, who told us, who described it best when we were discussing recovery. And she said, if you want life in the pack to be normal again, you must act as if life is normal.
Something else that we learned from another great vet is that cancer and coping with it is so much easier if you find a vet who practices something called relationship-based care. This is a vet who respects your opinions and feelings. It's not a vet who likes to throw big words around and not explain things to you. This is a vet who will lay out all of the treatment options on the table, regardless of price or what they assume that you can or cannot afford, so that together you can reach a collaborative decision for the best treatment for your animal.
Rene mentioned being positive a minute ago with Dr. Dyer's story, and I want to focus on that for a minute because it's so important. There really is hope after a diagnosis, especially if you get a second opinion. So even if you like and trust your regular vet, be sure to seek the expertise of a specialist. Because Dr. Google really only goes so far. There's a lot of information out there, and you've got to watch out for information overload. So focus on what you can and cannot realistically do. Be sure to take things one step at a time, and always remember to be positive.
One way you can be positive is to surround yourself with positive people, like those in our Tripawds community. Because when you find out your dog has cancer and you start telling everyone you know, that's when you really find out which of your friends and family members think that a dog is just a dog, versus a dog is part of your family and you're going to do what you can. So find positive people and surround yourself with a support network, because it's really easy to remain upbeat when you don't feel so alone.
It really is easier to cope with difficult situations when you team up with people who understand what you're going through. It's also very important to tune out the naysayers who will question the lengths you'll go to care for your pet. Some people just don't get it, and they never will. But most importantly, you've got to stop questioning yourself. Stop saying, what if I tried this? What if I did that? Cancer doesn't always play by the rules. Had we listened to all the negativity that we faced during Jerry's diagnosis and amputation, we never would have had the best 2 years of our lives together.
Just remember that there are no right answers when it comes to dealing with cancer. A vet once told us that treating cancer is a lot like throwing spaghetti on the wall. You throw the pasta up there and you see what treatments stick. Well, there are no guarantees about what's going to stick. Nobody really knows. So remember that you can never make a right or wrong decision when it comes to treating your animal's cancer.
And that's why it's important to have no regrets. Like that spaghetti, you've got to pick a treatment plan and stick with it, knowing that you did the best you could for your dog. That's what we did with Jerry. This photo was taken literally a couple days before we laid him to rest. Had his body let him, he would have climbed those mountains. Here, this photo was taken just a couple weeks prior to that, and you can tell that illness clearly isn't on his mind. We might not have walked far, but it was certainly enough for him. He was just happy to be out with his pack, enjoying life. So when you're dealing with a diagnosis or a major surgery, life isn't over by any means. It's just different. So let's talk about what we like to call the new normal, and some simple things you can do to adjust in your life to make the most of your remaining time together with your dog.
The new normal isn't really a big deal. There are just 3 simple areas that can help improve your dog's life in so many different ways. We're going to go over each one of them individually. But for now, the 3 areas are modifying your dog's environment, building strength and stamina, and taking a full spectrum approach to your dog's healthcare needs. In the following slides, we'll go over some of these new normal suggestions.
One suggestion we can learn from dogs in the wild, and that is that confinement is key to safe recovery. Take a wolf, for instance. When he's injured or becomes ill, he's going to leave the pack to heal on his own. He's not going to show signs of weakness because he knows if he does, he might get thrown out of the pack anyway, or worse. He's not going to eat so much, and that means he may not eliminate as much. And he's just going to be quiet and heal on his own and conserve his energy. And you can do the same thing for your dog by creating a safe place or a recovery room with pet gates. And there's all sorts of other helpful gear that can help make life easier.
There sure is a lot of gear. For example, this is Wyatt. He's our new Tripawds spokes dog. And Wyatt is wearing a Roughwear Webmaster harness, which we highly recommend for 3-legged dogs or any dog who's just having difficulties getting around. The harness really helps you help your dog on awkward floors and weird situations like that. Other helpful devices include steps and ramps to help your dog get into their favorite spots, traction booties, doggy strollers for taking longer walks together, and even a float coat like the one you see Wyatt wearing there. They really help your dog swim a lot longer and safer. So there's all these great devices out there to help us protect our dogs from injury. But how do we walk that fine line between overprotecting them and letting them just be a dog? Back when Jerry lost his leg, Jim and I really wanted him to just go out there and live life and do all of his favorite things again because we really didn't think he had a lot of time. But back then, we didn't know that things like letting him play frisbee or jump in and out of our pickup truck could actually be injuring him in ways like causing hairline fractures to his legs over time.
Once we learned that Jerry's favorite game might be harming him, we just changed the rules a bit. We modified playing frisbee by throwing it much lower to the ground so he didn't have to jump to catch it. We didn't throw it as far, and we played much less often. But still, after one fun day, he came home with a limp. And that scared us, considering he no longer had his spare leg. So we rushed to a vet who identified a partial ACL tear. And we were introduced to the world of rehab vets, massage for dogs, canine acupuncture, and we discovered that it really is our job to monitor their behavior to help avoid injury. But there are plenty of ways to keep dogs fit and trim and entertained without high-impact exercise. Take Wyatt, for instance. Here he is on some paw pods from a company called Fitpaws. By standing on those pods and turning to the left and right and up and down, he's having fun and developing core muscle strength and balance. You can do the same thing your own without having to buy gear by making this Booja board or balance board. It's doing the same thing by developing core muscle strength and balance by getting him to stand on it while it wobbles. But most importantly, you've got to get creative and use all of your dog's senses.
And all of those senses include your dog's most important muscle, the brain. This is Maggie, and she's a former award-winning agility dog who lost her leg at about the age of 10. After Maggie lost her leg, her mom really wanted her to stop doing so many intensely physical things and instead start challenging her mind some more. So now Maggie is doing fun things like obedience rallies, canine nosework competitions, and she's playing with some really fun puzzles and games that we're going to show you in this next slide. This is Wyatt, and he and Tawny over there on the right are both playing with a game called the Doggy Twister, which you'll find at Tripawds in our gear blog. The Doggy Twister is a fun game which encourages your dog's hunting instinct by requiring them to dig around these little compartments in order to pull out some treats. It's a fun way to work your dog's mind, but if you like to play games like this together, remember, watch those treats.
Definitely watch the treats. It's especially important to keep dogs fit and trim if they're dealing with any physical challenge or weakened immune system. But we're not vets, so we highly recommend you talk to a canine nutritionist to find out what's best for your dog. Take, for instance, that we learned 1 pound of fat on a dog is equal to about 5 pounds on a human.
So to help your dog stay slim, instead of feeding high-calorie treats, replace them with things like crunchy veggies, green beans. Even your dog's favorite toy, though, can make a great incentive when you're playing together. And speaking of nutrition, something else that we learned when Jerry was fighting cancer was that cancer cells feed on carbs. So we fed Jerry a bones and raw food diet, which meant a lot of high proteins like meat. And we thought he did really well on it. We know lots of other dogs who have too. If you're thinking of going this route, we highly recommend finding a vet who's knowledgeable in it and talking to them about changing your dog's diet, because not all vets are crazy about it. This is a little example of what we would put into Jerry's food every night, because we learned about which supplements could help keep the cancer away. Things like canine immunity, kelp and alfalfa powders, and stuff like that. There's a lot of information out there about supplements to fight cancer, but we really caution you to watch for miracle cures. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Find a vet who's open-minded, understands holistic care for treating cancer, and will consider all approaches to helping your dog fight this disease.
The best dog cancer vet that we've discovered in our research is Dr. Demian Dressler out of Hawaii, and he's developed what he calls a full-spectrum care approach to treating cancer. Renee's going to tell about it in more detail, but you can find all the information you need at dogcancerguidebook.com.
So one of the reasons why we love this book so much is because Dr. Dressler gives a full-spectrum approach to treating cancer. In this book, he discusses the different treatments and therapies that can help treat your dog's cancer. Everything from Western medicine to alternative therapies, he goes into detail on. He describes which ones are helpful for which types of cancer and which ones could be a total waste of your money. He even explores the mind-body connection and talks about how doing things like staying positive and thinking positive can really help keep the cancer from consuming you and your dog during this journey. You know, we love this book because it really taught us that not all oncologists strictly rely on Western medicine. There are so many out there who are combining different approaches to create this full-spectrum approach.
We all want to do what's best for our dogs, so consider a full-spectrum care approach. And to look at all options of care, talk to an open-minded specialist. Get information about all the types of treatment available to you and your dog so you can feel confident and empowered about the decisions you make. At this point in our live keynote, we gave away a copy of Dr. Dressler's Dog Cancer Survival Guide by asking the question, what does Dr. Dressler call his multifaceted approach to treating all aspects of cancer? The answer is a full-spectrum care approach, and you can find out all about it at dogcancerguidebook.com. So, enough about caring and treatment. Let's take a look at a few amazing cancer dogs and talk about the life lessons they've had to share. But first, I want to share with you this comic. It's a mutt strip, and we love mutts. It's got Ozzy working hard, slaving away, and he says, "Gee, what time is it?" Earl answers and says, "Now, now, 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 now." And they simply go for a walk, and he says, "Dogs always know what time it is." And that's so true. We cut this strip out in 2008 when Jerry's cancer returned, and we still have it in our medicine cabinet today as a daily reminder of what really matters most in life, and that is to make the most of it right now.
Here's another Mutt's comic strip that we love, the to-do list, over on the right. That one really shows you what's important in life. 1, you stop, and 2, you smell the roses. That's really all that should matter to us, right? Even Dr. Dressler loves this concept, as he described in his doggy to-do list. He says things like, what's important to a dog? Well, getting outside into the fresh air, running as fast as you can, and playing with your toys. Isn't that great? You know, the message is the same in all of these comics. Make the most out of life. And when it comes to tripods, We have one simple recommendation on our to-do list when coping with any kind of adversity, and that's to be more dog. To live in the now. Because dogs only care about what's in front of them right here and now. Things like treat, ball, stick.
Squirrel!
For instance, take some of these heroes from the Tripawds community.
Jerry will always be our hero, and he taught us that every day is a great day, no matter what life throws your way. And he taught us this every day in our journey together. Here he is playing in the Gulf Coast. And that was a huge milestone for us, just like it was to see him play in the Atlantic off the coast of Maine, in the Great Lakes, and in the Mississippi. But these were all huge milestones for us. Often by the end of the day, we were wondering if he would make it to the next one. Not Jerry. For him, every single day was another opportunity to get out and make the most out of life.
Here's another dog who made the most out of life. This is Eisen. And Eisen's message to everybody is, don't let adversity slow you down. Enjoy what you can do. Don't focus on what you can't. Eisen was another dog who was considered a bad candidate for amputation surgery. Nobody would have ever guessed that this dog would live 4 years after his osteosarcoma diagnosis. But Eisen made the most of every single day he was alive, and in the end, he surprised everybody with how well he did.
Lala will always have a special place in our hearts. She taught us to take time to smell the roses. She was from Israel, where the human healthcare system is quite advanced, but not so much for pets. Her amputation and recovery from osteosarcoma was a rare case in a 30-year-old vet practice. But she did great. She ended up living 2 years, and her mom attributed that to their frequent walks on the beach every day, where she would run and chase some birds and then sit and do what she liked to call seize the wave. In researching this talk, we came across a comic that her mom, Lala's mom, wrote for us. It's called Jerry and Lala Save the World. We want to share it for you now because it's really a great reminder of what we have to learn from our dogs. Jerry basically greets Lala and says, "Hey, let's go save the world."
And she says, how are we going to save the world, Jerry?
Don't worry, I've got it all figured out. First, we'll stop by teaching them to stop and smell the flowers. To dance on the ocean. That God is the color of water. And what I like to say, that it's better to hop on 3 legs than to limp on 4.
And then she says, cool, let's go save the moon now. Again, focusing on the now. Here's another dog who focused on the now. This is Lincoln. And Lincoln's lesson to all of us is never give up. Do everything within your power to reach your highest aspirations. Lincoln never gave up. He was a fighter. Lincoln was diagnosed with brain cancer even before he got an osteosarcoma diagnosis. But he never let that stop him. After 3 years, however, the bone cancer was making him slow down a little bit, and his rear leg was getting weaker. But as his mom wrote in her Tripawds blog, she said, the funny thing is, nobody told Lincoln. He kept on going and swimming and just having a great time until his very last day.
Finally, here's Jeannie. Her message to everyone was, simply be. Jeannie and her mom, they were also early Tripawds members. Jeannie was diagnosed with osteosarcoma at 12 years old and survived for another 7 months. Her mom often discussed the timelessness that dogs live in, always now, always present. And even after Jeannie's passing, her mom continued to help others with some sage advice. Like, a cancer diagnosis is what it is. The disease will take its course. We can fight it all we want and as hard as we want, but we really must focus on quality of life, not quantity of life. Because the only outcome we have any total control over is how we react to it. We have some amazing lessons to learn from these dogs and our own cancer heroes. So in case you missed it, our message here has been to be more dog. And that's what Jerry taught us. Here he is living at the now in one of our favorite photos, taken just a month or so before we set him free. You can tell he's focused on the now, and right now, that for him was getting back in the water. It helps us see that during tough times, it's easier in life when we be more dog.
This is what we wanted to share with you today. because Tripawds has taught us how to make the most out of scary situations, and we really feel that we owe it to all of these great dogs to share these lessons with as many people as possible. We hope that you'll go and share them with others that you know.
At this point in our live keynote, we actually gave away a few copies of 3 Legs and a Spare, a canine amputation handbook with some of the best information from Tripawds.com. Just for watching here, we want to extend this coupon code to you for $3 off at downloads.tripawds.com. Use GRF 2012 for $3 off 3 Legs and a Spare at downloads.tripawds.com.
I just want to thank our sponsors one more time, Canine Medicinals, Morris Animal Foundation, and thank you to Greyhounds Rock for asking us to give this keynote.
Thank you, and please remember to be more dog.